Welcome. You are listening to the Be a Better Being podcast hosted by Michelle Zellner and Sasha Berscheid. Michelle and Sasha are here to give you information and inspiration to help you live your healthiest, happiest lives. Thank you for tuning in. We hope you enjoy the show.
Greetings. Thank you for tuning in to the Be a Better Being podcast. I'm Michelle Zellner, your host, joined today by my fantastic side host, Sasha. What's going on, girlfriend?
Hi, everyone.
I'm excited for this conversation. Once again, you have come through with an amazing guest that I am excited to learn about, a connection from Omaha, Leia Baez. Welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, ladies. I'm happy to be here.
Yes, well, we are very happy to have you here. Coming up later this week on September 14th is National Sobriety Day. If you know a teeny weeny bit about the Be a Better Being podcast, you know we talk about that because it is a topic very near and dear to Sasha. And so I think we just like to take any opportunity to celebrate and talk about it. Sasha, let's talk about you very quickly because you just recently passed year number 9.
Yeah, 9 years. And to be honest, when I started following Leah, I was like blown away because she has written a book. She is so steadfast on her sobriety. And for me, as a person who celebrates life and through sobriety, when I saw her advocating for others to get sober, I was like, oh my gosh, this is a no-brainer. We have got to have her on this podcast and on this day.
Well, I am super grateful, number one, for you in my life because you've opened my world to so many amazing people. And Leah, that you're taking time to join us today. So let's just dive in. Let's hear the story of your journey and then talk about all those amazing things that you are doing to support and advocate for other people to live a life of sobriety.
That's a really, really big question, but I'll try to break it up. So my sober birthday, like they like to call them, is November 7th, 2019. And I had tried for years and years to get sober. I knew that alcohol was my biggest setback. Alcohol had prevented me from doing so many things that I knew I could accomplish, but I was just in this cycle. And I like to kind of compare it to a carousel. I would work out all week. I would be fit, and then the weekends come and it was binge drinking, and it was like this vicious cycle I could not break. And I was like one of those beautiful horses on the carousel ready to break free, and I just didn't know how to do it. I come from, a family of alcoholism on both sides. I also had some childhood trauma in my life that I didn't realize until later, many years later, 30 years later after this, happened, that the reason I had been binge drinking and self-medicating was tied to that. And I didn't even realize that until I did go to therapy and try to work through some things, not because I thought I was an alcoholic, but because I was going through a really hard time in my life. I was going through a divorce and a custody battle and basically kind of forced into therapy for so many years, wanted to live that life where I didn't have to think constantly about where I'm getting my next drink. Where am I going to go to happy hour? Who am I going to hang out with? I joke with my girlfriends that I used to go shopping, like you're going to go out for the weekend, right? So we go get a new outfit because we want to look cute, whatnot. And I would specifically buy like jeans because I knew that I was probably going to end up blacked out drunk, and I didn't want my undies showing in a skirt. You know what I mean? Like, these are the thoughts that I would have because I was stuck in this cycle of drinking. And it was really, really hard for me to envision a life without it. So fast forward, many years. And in 2019, I lost my uncle to cancer. He had leukemia, probably would still be alive, but he was a big drinker. And so his liver could not process the chemotherapy. And so for me, I saw myself in him a lot. And I thought about, because I would, even drink with him quite a bit. And I saw myself and I said, he was only 59 when he passed. If I only have 20 more, 29 more years to live, or if I only have a couple decades left on this earth because I'm drinking just as much as he was, like, am I living the best version of me, And I knew I wasn't. And then, I had kind of like this spiritual awakening. I had like this dream of my uncle. He came into my dream. And I write about this in my book, but he kind of just had this really loud, boisterous laugh. And he just grabbed me by the shoulder in my dream. And there was like this bright white light around him. And he's just like, you don't have to drink. And it was just like this moment of like, duh, like, I don't have to do this, like as easy as that, I mean, like as simple as that sounds, I guess. I just knew that like that's what I needed, right? I needed somebody to remind me that I can do this and I don't have to live like everyone else is living. I can be different and I can choose to go against the grain and be completely different from most of my family and friends, right? And so that after the next morning after I had that dream, I remember I went to my boyfriend and I was like, I'm done drinking. And he was like laughing because I'm sure I've said that many times before, because I'd wanted to for a long, long time. And I was like, no, I think this is for real this time. I said, something's different about this. And that was it. And so November 7th, 2019, that's my sober date. And I just feel so free, it's just so incredible to not have to think about that all the time. And some other things in my life had pushed me to that point of realization, really realizing I was an alcoholic. I write in my book, which is called A Star for Stella. My daughter's name is Stella. And it's really about my journey to overcome alcoholism and find sobriety and then find that best version of myself. But in my book, I really just talk about how I, had wanted to give this up for so long, but I didn't know how. And it wasn't until I nearly lost custody of my child. I did lose custody of my daughter during my divorce after a really tragic night and something happened. It's in my book. It's very heartbreaking, but I did. I had to prove in the court of law that I was worthy to be a mother. And that was a shock to me, right? That was like, holy moly, like my decisions and the way that I'm acting and the things that I'm choosing in my life are really pulling me away from who I know I can be. And so that custody battle, that divorce really, even though it was the most difficult thing in my life, was also the best thing in my life because it really made me pull back the curtain on who I am, who I know I can be, and my full potential. And so I always tell people embrace those hard times because wow, like so many things can happen when we're forced to look at ourselves and look inside and say, I need help. I am not going to be able to do this alone. I need help. I want to get better. And there's something really powerful in that. So I even joked with my therapist. I was like, someday I'm going to write my ex-husband a thank you letter. And I'm just going to say, thank you for helping me see, who I know I can be. Because if it wasn't for the divorce and, fighting for custody for my daughter, I don't know. I might still be that same girl drinking and so I'm really grateful for all the hard times, but I'm so grateful that I get to live my life now, inspiring others and sharing my story. And I know a lot of my really good friends and close family members still drink. So I'm not the type of person to push, you know, not drinking on them. That was my nemesis. That was really my setback. And I knew that was in my way. But it's kind of cool because I just speak about the positive changes in my life. And then they start to see how their own habits, whether it's drinking or something else, are affecting their lives. And so the fact that I get to now inspire other people through speaking and being an author and even just sharing my story with friends and family, it's a gift. I feel like it's a gift and I intend to use it and fully help as many people as I can because I'm a natural born storyteller. And I just feel like that's what God wants me to do is help as many people as possible.
Well, and I mean, that's why we wanted you on this podcast because we have a decent following. And I know there's a lot of people who are in that place that you were in, right? Maybe they don't think they're an alcoholic and maybe they're not. Maybe it's that binge drinking or just that one night that kind of spirals them into having a crappy weekend and then they eat junk and then they don't feel good on Monday, but it's fine. I'll suck it up and get it going and then we can go party on the weekend again and really deciding to get off that carousel. I really love that this came to you in a dream. Josh and I have both talked about the power of our dreams and how things come to us in dreams as well. And I mean, there's so many powerful messages, right, that come in a variety of ways and that Unfortunately, your uncle's situation was a huge wake up call. But
Mhm.
again, I think we don't choose our tragedies, but we do choose what we do when we're faced with them. And it sounds like obviously you took it pretty seriously. So the boyfriend laughed at you when you said, I'm done. Let's go with day one. What did that look like?
Yeah, so it was just kind of so another piece of this is I was actually having surgery. So I was under anesthesia when I had the dream, which is actually even more crazy because I had a tumor the size of a cantaloupe in my uterus. So it was a fibroid. It was non-cancerous, which is, I'm super grateful for that. But the nurses had told me like a lot of people have dreams under anesthesia, but there's also a lot of power in that because you're in another like I don't know, realm, something, but you leave basically, you know what I mean? So it's like those dreams are really powerful when you're under that. And because I woke up in tears, I remember waking up in tears and talking to the nurse, and I'm like, I feel really, weird. I just had this dream about my uncle, and she's like, oh, that happens, a lot when you're under anesthesia. But anyhow, so a piece of that is, I had this tumor inside of me, and I then also questioned, I'm not living my healthiest. Who knows how that grew? Who knows why that was in me? I was so scared I can't have any more children, because I chose to have a hysterectomy because the fibroid was so large, and they, there were several other options for me medically, but that was the best one, the safest one. I'm in the hospital. And so my boyfriend, it was super supportive, great guy, super supportive, still is very supportive. But it was a chuckle because I think he's heard it so many times. I was also under like still coming out of my, the drugs. And so he's probably laughing because it's more like, you're high, just chill, you'll be fine. But I was really so tired, I was just so tired, and I knew I was so much I had so much more to offer, and I was capable of so much more, and I just couldn't get there. I was like I saw everything, and I was just out of reach because I was just on this carousel, right? So I wasn't breaking free from those bad habits. So in that dream, and that whole situation, I was still kind of like day one, I'm still like in awe of this dream because it was so real, And it was kind of one of those moments where I was like, me, coming from a really strong faith and spiritual background, I'm like, that was an angel. Like he was with me. That was my angel. My uncle is my angel. Like he's telling me, like, I think he wanted to live sober too. I think he just didn't know how, because I felt like he was in that cycle, and I felt like he came to me to tell me, you know, you can do this and inspire as many other people to do it. So I was still kind of like creeped out by this dream day one. So, I mean, and like I said, I was still recovering. So I was just taking it easy, and I wasn't drinking because I just had surgery, or, and drinking wasn't even on my mind. But that dream did something to me. It was a really strong spiritual moment for me. And I like to say it was like my awakening, because it was just like, I believe it was like, he was an angel. I mean, that's just what I think. And so that moment just stood, was with me that day one. And then day two, I started telling people, I think I told my parents. I remember my dad, his exact words were, well, I hate to be around you when you fall off that wagon, because he had seen me in my worst, and he knows like I'd get shit faced. I don't know. Sorry. I don't know if I can say that, but really drunk and stupid and out of control. And so, um, him saying that, also made me feel like he doubted me, like he didn't think I could do it. And, but then some of my friends, they really believed in me, and they knew that I could do it. And then other friends I kind of lost, through the way, like, I mean, they're still around in the social media world, but like not we don't go to happy hours because I don't go to happy hours anymore. We don't hang out like we used to. And so those relationships have fizzled. But, I think that dream had such an impact on me that it was easy for me to say no in the first few weeks. Okay. And then in my recovery, so my surgery was in November of 2019. It was Christmas Eve where I had this really I had a breakdown. holidays were really hard for me because I'm divorced. And so I had to share custody with my ex-husband. And that was always a trigger for me. Like I hated being by myself. Like I didn't know how to be alone. And that's another reason why I would binge drink, because when I was alone, it was like, how do I numb myself? How do I turn off the emotions? And I remember I was so frustrated and I just was like, I just want to go to the bar. I'm just going to go to the dive bar and I'm just going to have a few and come home and I'm going to be okay. And I remember I told my boyfriend, I was like, let's just go have a few drinks. And he's like, no. And I was like, we're going to go get a few drinks. We're just going to just have a few and then we'll come back. And he had came over and gave me a Christmas gift. And in my Christmas gift was a pack of Heineken 0.0. And he's like, here, have one of these instead. And so for him to do that for me was like all I needed. It was just like this, it was so weird because it was just like having the bottle to my lips and like drinking out of a bottle, like the motion of it was like all I needed, you know? And then I was fine. And I didn't even drink anymore after that. It was just that one to calm me down, to relax and just take a deep breath and realize that I can get through this. And it was his support really though that helped me through that moment, and knowing that I don't need alcohol, but I just had to work through it somehow, and he was there for me and super supportive. So I always credit him for that, keeping me on track because I was ready to fall off. I really was. But yeah, so first few days, pretty easy for me. It was just the holidays that seemed to be a trigger for me. Every day is every day is another day though, right? To stay on the wagon, as my dad would say.
So you didn't mention any, and this is really important to me. Sorry, guys, Draco's hanging out with me here too. But did you ever get yourself into AA, or did you always just muster through all on your own?
Yeah, so when I was fresh out of the hospital, I was on this mindset that okay, I'm staying sober. I knew through CrossFit another gal who used to work out I used to work out with at a gym that was sober. And so I connected with her on Facebook and I just sent her a message and I'm like, "Hey, I'm really going to try this sober life and I need some support. Would you take me under your wing cuz I'm not in AA. I've never been to I went to a couple meetings years before I actually got sober and I just didn't feel it was for me. So I reached out to her and she's like, absolutely. And just by, coincidence, I guess, another friend of hers had reached out to her like the day before and wanted that same mentorship. And she's like, do you mind if we all get together? And so it turned out like it created this small, we call ourselves the Sober Support Sisters. It's basically just a group of 3 women and we're on speed dial when we need each other. When I first had my first drunk dream, I remember calling Joelle and I was like, Joelle is my sober support sister. And I was in tears and I was like, dude, this was so real. I had a dream that I got wasted and I was like a mess. And she's like, oh, girl, they're going to keep coming. Those things are real and you'll just keep having them. And I actually just had one the other night and I hadn't had one for many years. But yeah, so this really, I relied on women that I knew who were sober who had did it before me and I could count on them. I felt more comfortable with that, I guess. And the AA meetings that I did attend in the past just weren't my vibe. And so I rely a lot on meditation and my faith and yeah, my sober support sisters. So they're the ones that kept me on track. And I remember there was a couple times where I felt like losing it and even just meeting for coffee and talking through some of it with them made a huge difference for me. So
That's really beautiful. Thank you for sharing with that. I wanted to call that out because there are so many different paths to sobriety and through sobriety. So I always want to call those out, like highlighting it can be done without like you have to do this, you must follow this, you must do it this way. Community is, we've had Sasha Tazi on the show before and she always posts a lot, and just in general it is the consensus that the opposite of addiction is actually community. And that is also, CrossFit is actually one of the things that helped me step away from AA because there were some things that triggered me within AA. And so CrossFit, I leaned so heavily on that and I'm so glad that you did too.
mhm. Yeah, I mean, fitness has been a huge thing for me for a long time, just like my mental health, even, feeling sane. I started CrossFit in 2014 and I took a break for a bit. And then when I really, when I was really heavy in my sobriety, like really just like I got to keep focused, like right in the beginning, I leaned back into it and made sure I had that support and that community. And I love now that there's so many communities, even within CrossFit across the country, that have like sober groups and they have like sober lifting. There's the Phoenix. I don't know if you've heard of the Phoenix. It's a great app. They have classes and like organized hikes and activities all over the country that are specific for fitness and sobriety. And it's super great to know. It's so funny because it's like when you buy a red car, right? Then you see all the red cars. It's like, I never knew there were so many sober people until you're sober and you're looking for sobriety, right? So there's so many things out there that I just feel grateful for because CrossFit's one of them. Yeah, just a lot to do. And now there's sober Omaha groups and a lot of like dry spokes and a lot of organizations working this community. So it's really great to see.
Well, and I think that highlights something that Sasha and I talk about all the time is that we're not supposed to do hard things alone, right? We need support and community. And it's interesting. I have a gal that I just talked to yesterday. She's going to be an October episode. She sought out CrossFit as well, but hers was kind of because of a food issue. So, whatever the issue is, you need community to help you through it.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times we feel like we need to do it alone, or because we're so used to the community that we've built with this habit, we're afraid to let go of that one because we think there is nothing else out there, or we don't know, right? The fear of the unknown. Will
Mm-hmm.
they accept me? Will I like it? What if I do fall off the wagon? Now I'm in this sober community and I'm not sober. So that's scary. And then I'm a failure. So there's all these reasons that maybe hold somebody back making this big leap, right? This big decision. And obviously your boyfriend at the time played a critical role in that. And I
Yeah,
think that yeah, I mean, that also highlights why it's so important that we have really tight people around us for
mhm.
anything that he could easily have said, okay, well, let's go.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Maybe, I don't know. Is he sober as well? Did he get on this
He
path with you or?
he definitely is not sober, but he does not drink as like a lot. So it's pretty, it's rare. And if he does drink, you'll never know he's, intoxicated or something. It's just usually a one or, a few drinks here and there. But, I will say I've also had a hard time like figuring that out because I'm sober and he's not. And so it's like, do how can I, and I know it's my own trauma that I need to work through, but it's like also how can I be accepting of that? Because it kind of sometimes irritates me, And I'm like, I get annoyed if he's, drinking too much or if he's had more than 3 beers, I get annoyed, And but he's never had an issue with drinking like I did. And so I've got to figure out how to have that, give him grace too, because he's so supportive of me, but then also how do I not get irritated because he still drinks, And so that's another whole topic of, but dating sober, do you can you date somebody who's not sober or not? But I'm working through that. That's something I actually talked to my therapist about, and we're trying to figure out, what is it that triggers me to be upset? And I think it's because I know that I can't drink, because I turn into a completely different person. Somebody I do not like, do not want to be that person ever again. And it's hard for me sometimes to accept that other people don't have that trait. Can they can just have 2 drinks and shut off. Whereas me, happy hour turned into after hours for me. I just wanted to go, 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 go until I was drunk, blacked out somewhere, So it's a learning process for sure. It's definitely a journey, but I am super grateful for his support because he does continue to support me. Even I'll joke with him and be like, let's go have a few drinks. And he'll be like, you would hate yourself. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I know I would. But I just say that to be funny. But I have gone out with him and like I will get like an NA beer and he'll have a regular beer. So we can do that, So yeah, I'm still working, still learning. It's a journey for sure, but I'm super grateful for his support because I think that's the most important thing is having somebody that will support you in your goals, not their own. So
Well, and I'm wondering because I'm thinking about like my own stuff with food and maybe there's a little bit of you that's envious of him, right? That
yeah.
he can do this.
Hmm.
And there was a part of you that liked your drunk self. It was fun, right? You were
Hmm.
fun. At some point it maybe turned a different direction, but it was fun. And so there's a piece of you that you mourn the loss of that fun girl that
Hmm.
you don't get to be anymore. You're just a different version of a fun girl.
Hmm.
And I think about like my sister can have 9 different flavors of ice cream in her freezer and have, like, 1 bite every 4 months, and I'm envious of that because I can't do that.
Hmm.
Right? If ice cream's in my freezer, it is not in my freezer because it's in my mouth, like and so I choose to not have those things in my house.
Hmm.
When I go visit her, I don't expect her to get rid of them.
Hmm.
If she wants to have some ice cream that night, I can choose to have it or not. And usually it's better for me if I just don't start because then I'm
Hmm.
going to want more and more and more because I mean it's not the same, it's similar. And there is that feeling of I'm missing out because I don't have the, capability of having just a little bit,
Hmm.
right? And so there is a little bit of that and I'm guessing I mean, even harder when you live with somebody, right? Because it's
Right.
there every day. So that's probably part of it. And I'm curious, did you actually ever take that time to kind of mourn and grieve the loss of that person you were?
Yeah, I think so. I have had several different coaches, career coaches, and also just like a life coach. And there was an exercise that I really liked that kind of fit into that, and it was writing a letter to my younger self. And in that younger self letter, I mean, I remember specifically saying how I had these visions of, doing these incredible things, but there's going to be setbacks and there's going to be challenging times and it's okay to not be that person anymore. It's okay and growth is normal. And I was telling this younger version of me that growing into who you're supposed to be is going to be hard and it's not going to be pretty and it's actually going to be really difficult at times. And I think that was kind of my way of telling myself, like this is going to be okay. Like yes, that girl is she's still part of you, she's still part of my growth and she's a reason I am successful in doing the things that I'm doing now, but she doesn't get to come out and play anymore. She stays buried, right? So, but it's I've had that conversation with myself in that exercise. I think that was actually very cathartic for me, because it's kind of like it's okay, you're moving through this and you're letting it go. So I really enjoyed that exercise. I thought that was kind of my process of doing that.
Yeah, I definitely support that kind of journey because, one of the things that whenever we're trying to change a habit, a big one or a small one, we look at what we can't do or what we are no longer doing.
Mhm.
And that means we're not having the opportunity to look at all the things we can do and what we are going to do. And if we just kind of ignore this piece, it doesn't mean it's gone. It's still there. We're just ignoring it. So I
Mhm.
think we do deserve to give it some time and attention to really have those emotions and those thoughts and feelings about it. And then we can start to look the other way and be excited about the new things that are, maybe in our future and the new experiences, the new communities that you've built and all of the amazing things that you're doing now. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about how you specifically are helping people work through their own issues with alcohol and maybe help them find a way to sobriety.
Yeah, so once I published my book, it was crazy. Like I had DMs from so many people I would never even guess who have said that they read my book and they have a similar story. They have a similar situation. They are too struggling, and these are people who are attorneys, nurse practitioners. These are people who didn't expect that COVID was going to have such an impact on their drinking habits and now are used to downing a bottle of wine or two just to get through the day, right? I had another person, and she's actually given me the permission to say this. So she messaged me on Facebook basically saying that because she was working from home during COVID and working remote now, her schedule had changed, her life had shifted. She would start the day, instead of drinking coffee, she was drinking wine. And she didn't realize the impact that was having on her as a mother, as a wife, and as an employee. She started just to see this downward spiral. And so she reached out to me and asked that similar question that Sasha did, like, how did you do it? Who did you count? Who did you talk to? And so what I try to tell people is that, like we already kind of discussed, is like there's really no perfect way to get sober, right? You've got to find the best way for you. There's so many ways, there's so many resources out there. There is AA, there's other organizations. There's a great app out there that, there's so many. I'm trying to, let me just slip my mind. Reframe app is a whole digital online community that can support you with meetings virtually and all the things. So there's tons of support out there, right? You just have to put yourself into that space. That's the first thing that I say, because there's so many options out there. But if somebody is like asking, kind of wants to dig deeper, like I will lay it all out there for them, how I did it. And I get a lot of that. So I get a lot of questions on how you got sober. And so I'm like an open book. I'm just like, here's how I did it. If you have any questions, I'm here as a resource. Please let me help you. And then I just, let them do their thing. I don't press anyone. I don't poke anyone. I'll occasionally reach out and just say, hey, how are you doing? But I don't want to be the person who's like trying to preach or trying to like push anything on anyone. Instead, I try to let my successes and my life and the life that I'm living kind of tell the story for me. So people are seeing me lift heavy in the gym. They're seeing that I've wrote a great book that's getting awards. And they're seeing this shift in my life from being this wild party girl to now having this success. And the reason is because I'm sober. And so they see that and know that that's attainable because I'm just like them, right? And so I'd say the number one thing that I'm doing is just being a resource for people, being open with my journey, being vulnerable about it and not being afraid to talk about the really hard stuff. Almost losing custody of my daughter and having to fight to prove I was worthy to be a mom in court. Those are the things that I think people can resonate with, because usually when we're trying to change a habit or forced to look within, it's because of some really low point of our lives, right? It's like we're in the valley. It's like rock bottom, some people call it, but we need change, and we know that we've got to do something to make our lives better. And so I feel like being a resource to people is how I can do that. The second thing that I've been doing is I do a lot of keynote speaking. Super grateful. I get to speak to so many organizations and conferences, and my keynote is really about breaking habits and how we can get out of our own way to be our best self. And so for me, speaking to a big audience, it might not be alcohol for one person. It might be food. And it might not be food, but it might be self-doubt or, self-harm even. There's always something that we are dealing with, and we all have a story of what that is. And so by speaking on stages and sharing my story, I feel really grateful that, again, I get to be an example, like your life can be better and you can change and you can do great things regardless of what you've been through, regardless of how you grew up or the childhood trauma that you experienced. You can still be great. And that's really what I love to do. And so I would say those are the key things right there that I'm doing. I'm also coaching a few women, not necessarily on sobriety, but just on eliminating bad habits and trying to become speakers or publish books, doing things that they can, that I've accomplished that they want to do too. So I feel really grateful that I get to do the work that I'm doing. I would have never guessed that I'd be here. So really, really grateful.
Well, I hope the universe is grateful that you are sharing all these gifts, because this is exactly what we need, right? That message to know that you are not alone. And I say this all the time, and I know some people kind of bristle at it, but we are not unique. We really aren't. We're all the same. It looks a little different, but we are all struggling. We're all trying to figure it out. Everyone thinks like, oh, I'm the only one who goes through this hard stuff. And it still makes me like kind of drop my jaw when somebody says that. I'm like, how on earth do you think you are the only one? Like, you're not, you know?
Uh-huh.
But it does take people to be willing to be vulnerable and open up and share that story. So thank you for doing that. I have a question before we wrap up. What does your dad think about you today?
Oh, he's so super happy for me, super proud of me, super inspired. I think it's great because he still drinks, but he does drink less. And he's the first person, like, he gave up alcohol for Lent. And he rushed to call me and tell me right away. Like, he wanted me to be proud of him. And I think that's what I can do. That's what I can do for people, is inspire them to live healthier, to live better, to choose wellness. So many times we don't even know the negative side effects of alcohol, like anxiety and stress, and what it does to our muscles even, and the recovery we have if we're an athlete. Like, it's pretty brutal, but yet it's glamorized in our culture. And so I just feel, like I said, I get to show people by example how sobriety has changed my life. And I get really excited when somebody comes to me to tell me that they've also had similar experiences. So that's how I know that I'm living in my purpose and I'm doing the work that I'm supposed to be doing, because that just lights me up, even if it is just my dad telling me, like, I'm giving up alcohol for 40 days for Lent. So, but that means a lot, right? Because it means that I've inspired him at some point to want to consider his own habits.
Yeah, I love that. I love it. Sasha, do you have anything to wrap us up with?
No, just thank you so much for taking the time to pop on here and share your story. And I just adore you, and I'm so proud of you.
Oh, thank you so much. Congrats on your 9 years too. That's amazing.
Yes. Well, Leah, we will put all of the links in our show notes so people can reach out to you. I definitely encourage everybody to get your book, to follow you on social media, to reach out to you for some coaching or guidance in anything. I feel like you are a wealth of knowledge and gifts and talents, and that you're willing to share them is it's pretty fantastic. So thank you for sharing with us. And all the listeners, now you get to go and be a better being.
Thank you for listening to the Be a Better Being podcast. Michelle and Sasha hope that what you heard today inspires you to embrace this journey of life with an open mind, a kind heart, and a willingness to learn and evolve. If you enjoyed the content, please help spread their message by subscribing, sharing, and leaving a 5-star review. If you have a show topic idea or would like to be a guest, please visit betterbeings.net and fill out a contact form. Until next time, go and be a better being.